As the mighty lion strides down the deserted path, his gaze locks onto a young boy sitting alone, crying in the heart of the wildlife reserve. But no one could predict what's about to unfold, something that will astonish everyone in the reserve. Will this unexpected encounter between lion and boy come to an end, or is it just the beginning of something unbelievable? What happens next is beyond imagination. But first, make sure you're subscribed to the channel to catch more heartwarming stories like this. Chapter 1: The Encounter. Dawn was breaking over the wildlife reserve, casting a soft golden light across the dusty roads and scattered bushes. Amid the peaceful silence, a faint, sorrowful cry broke through, a child's voice, trembling and alone. This sound stirred a nearby lion, a powerful creature with a deep golden mane, who had once known the pain of abandonment himself. His keen eyes scanned the empty path, locating the source. A small child, fragile and frightened, sitting alone. Instinctively, the lion rose, his powerful muscles moving with grace as he approached cautiously, his eyes reflecting both curiosity and caution. The young boy, barely 3 years old, had been sitting there for hours, his face red and swollen from crying. Wearing an oversized blue jacket, he looked out with wide, frightened eyes at the lion approaching him. His small frame shivered slightly, more from fear than the morning chill, as he stared at the massive creature moving closer. The boy had been left alone in a place that felt vast and terrifying, and now he was face to face with one of nature's most feared predators. Just as the lion came closer, another figure appeared, a second lion with a darker mane and a fiercer disposition. This lion, who had recently staked his territory in this part of the reserve, noticed the small child and let out a low growl. The child gasped, his eyes darting between the two lions. The golden-maned lion stiffened, sensing the danger this rival posed. For a moment, the two lions locked eyes, and an unspoken challenge passed between them. The child was caught in the middle of a tense standoff, with the golden lion standing protectively in front. As the golden-maned lion positioned himself between the child and the aggressive intruder, a low, menacing growl rumbled from both lions, echoing through the stillness of the reserve. The darker-maned lion crouched low, muscles taut, ready to strike. With a powerful lunge, it launched itself toward the golden-maned lion, claws extended in a deadly swipe. The golden-maned lion, though solitary and weathered, held his ground. In one swift, fluid motion, he sidestepped the attack and struck back with a fierce swipe of his own, his claws slashing through the air with precision. Dust kicked up around them, forming a hazy cloud as the two lions circled each other, each watching for a weakness. The darker-maned lion, undeterred, snarled and lunged again, this time aiming a vicious bite toward the golden lion's neck. But the golden-maned lion was quick, twisting his powerful body to avoid the bite, then lunging forward to clamp his jaws onto the intruder's shoulder. The darker lion growled in pain, momentarily thrown off balance. The fight intensified, with growls, snarls, and the flash of fangs and claws as the two beasts fought in the dusty road. The golden-maned lion's eyes held a fierce resolve as he delivered blow after blow, intent on driving the other lion away. Finally, with one powerful strike to the ribs, the darker-maned lion staggered back, letting out a defeated roar before retreating into the nearby bushes. As the intruder disappeared, the golden-maned lion turned to face the child. The boy sat motionless, wide-eyed and overwhelmed by the fierce battle he had just witnessed. The lion's gaze softened, showing a quiet, yet steadfast protectiveness for the child he had defended with unwavering courage. With the other lion gone, the golden-maned lion turned back to the child, who was sitting in stunned silence, his small face a mixture of fear and awe. The lion's fierce gaze softened as he regarded the boy, his protective stance easing into something gentler, almost paternal. He lowered himself to the ground, resting his massive frame a short distance away, but his eyes never left the child, as though guarding him from any other unseen threat that might emerge. The boy, still trembling, looked up at the lion. His earlier tears were drying on his cheeks, and his wide eyes seemed to process the enormity of what had just happened. Here, before him, sat a creature he'd only seen in picture books, a creature more powerful and fearsome than anything he'd ever imagined. Yet at this moment, the lion felt less like a predator and more like a guardian, his watchful eyes conveying an unspoken assurance. Despite his initial fear, the boy sensed something unusual in the lion's demeanor. A calmness, a presence that seemed to say, "You're safe now." Taking a deep, shaky breath, the boy's body began to relax. His small fingers played with a piece of grass beside him, his gaze drifting between the lion and the surrounding trees, which now felt less menacing with his silent protector nearby. The lion lay in the dirt, his eyes half closed but ears alert, listening for any approaching sounds. It was as though he'd assumed the role of a silent sentinel, instinctively knowing that this vulnerable human needed his care. The child, feeling braver now, shifted slightly, his small hands reaching forward as if he wanted to touch the golden mane that lay just out of reach. But he stopped, hesitant, his fingers lingering in the air. The lion lifted his head slightly, noticing the boy's movement. He did not growl or retreat. Instead, he watched with a quiet curiosity, letting the boy take his time. It was as if an unspoken understanding had been established between them. For a long moment they sat in silence, the lion keeping his steady protective watch over the boy, who seemed to grow calmer with each passing second. In the vast wilderness under the early morning sun, the two unlikely companions, one a mighty beast of the wild, the other a small, vulnerable child, formed a bond in that quiet solitude. Surrounded by nature's vastness, it was a rare and beautiful connection, born out of circumstance and perhaps something deeper, something that transcended species and defied explanation. As the golden light bathed them both, the boy's small face relaxed, and he finally allowed himself a soft smile, his fear momentarily replaced with trust. The lion, sensing this shift, lay his head down, his body completely at ease yet always watchful. In that moment, they were no longer predator and prey. They were simply two souls finding solace in one another's presence. Chapter 2: The Ranger's Discovery. The early morning sunlight filtered through the trees, casting long shadows across the dirt paths of the wildlife reserve. Charlie, a young, rugged park ranger, was finishing his usual rounds when a call crackled over the radio. The words were barely audible, but he made out a phrase that sent a chill down his spine. Child spotted near the east perimeter, possibly abandoned. Charlie's heart raced. Children weren't supposed to be anywhere near this part of the reserve, especially without supervision. He quickly revved up his Jeep and turned down the narrow, winding path that led to the location. As he drove, his mind flashed back to his years working at the reserve. He'd witnessed all kinds of wildlife encounters and even a few rescues, but a child being left here alone? That was something he'd never experienced before. As Charlie neared the area, he slowed down, scanning the surroundings carefully. In the distance, he saw something that made him press the brake sharply, a large lion sitting calmly in the middle of the road. But this wasn't just any lion. This was the lion he'd raised and released back into the wild. His golden mane glowed in the morning light, and his body was relaxed, but his eyes were focused intently on something just in front of him. Charlie's gaze shifted, and his breath caught in his throat. A small boy, no older than 3, was sitting on the dusty ground, looking up at the lion with wide, awestruck eyes. The boy's blue jacket was dusty, and his cheeks were stained with dried tears, but he seemed calm, almost mesmerized by the presence of the lion before him. Charlie's instincts kicked in. He quietly opened the door of his Jeep, not wanting to startle either the lion or the child. As he stepped out, he softly called the lion's name. "Hey there, big guy," he murmured, his voice steady but soft. The lion's ears twitched slightly, acknowledging his presence, but he didn't move, his gaze still fixed on the child. Slowly, Charlie walked closer, his eyes never leaving the lion's. He'd raised this lion from a cub, bottle-feeding him and caring for him after his mother had been killed by poachers. They had shared a unique bond, and although the lion was now a wild creature, Charlie knew he still recognized him. The lion's calm behavior reassured Charlie that the boy wasn't in immediate danger. Once he was close enough, Charlie knelt down, bringing himself to the child's eye level. The boy looked at him with a mixture of relief and curiosity, clutching a small tuft of grass in his tiny hand. "Hey, little buddy," Charlie whispered, smiling gently. "My name's Charlie. Are you okay?" The boy didn't answer, but his eyes softened and he leaned slightly towards Charlie, as if recognizing him as a figure of safety. Charlie gently extended his hand, giving the boy the opportunity to reach out if he wanted to. After a moment, the child released the tuft of grass and placed his small hand in Charlie's. It was a fragile gesture, but one filled with trust. Charlie scooped the boy up, keeping his movements slow and gentle. The lion finally moved, standing up and stretching as if he'd completed his duty. He glanced at Charlie, his golden eyes lingering for a moment before he turned and padded off down the road, his job as the child's protector seemingly complete. Charlie watched as the lion disappeared into the tall grass, feeling a surge of gratitude. "Thank you, old friend," he whispered. Turning his attention back to the child, he spoke softly. "Let's get you somewhere safe, all right?" As he carried the boy to his jeep, he noted the child's quiet demeanor. It wasn't normal for a child to be so calm around a lion, especially one as large and powerful as this one. This boy had a unique resilience, and it intrigued Charlie. Once they were safely seated in the jeep, Charlie offered the boy some water from a canteen. The child took it with shaky hands, sipping slowly. Charlie watched him with a gentle smile, noticing the faint glimmer of relief in the boy's eyes. "Do you have a name?" he asked softly, but the boy simply stared at him, his small hand clutching the canteen as if it were a lifeline. Not pressing further, Charlie drove them back to the reserve's main station. As he drove, his mind raced with questions. Who would leave a child here, in such a dangerous place? The boy's clothes looked worn, but they weren't dirty enough to suggest he'd been alone for long, and yet he didn't seem to be looking for anyone. No calling out for Mom or Dad. Just silence, and an occasional glance out the window as the reserve's landscape passed by. When they reached the station, Charlie carried the boy inside, where he laid out a small blanket on a chair for him. The boy settled down, his gaze drifting to the window where, in the distance, he could see the vast expanse of the reserve. His small face was calm now, a mix of relief and exhaustion. Charlie stepped into the next room to make a call to the local authorities. His duty was clear: report the incident and find out if anyone was searching for a missing child. But as he waited on the line, his eyes kept drifting back to the boy. There was a bond there, an unspoken connection that Charlie couldn't quite understand yet, but he felt it deeply. When the authorities finally answered, Charlie explained the situation, though he kept his tone neutral, trying not to let his growing attachment to the child show. "Yes, I'll keep him here until you arrive. He's safe with me," Charlie said firmly, glancing at the boy who was now watching him intently. As he ended the call, Charlie returned to the boy kneeling down beside him. "It's going to be okay," he reassured, placing a comforting hand on the child's shoulder. The boy looked up at him, finally speaking in a soft, almost inaudible voice. "Lion," he murmured, his small face lighting up with the memory. Charlie chuckled softly, nodding. "Yes, that lion, he's a friend, and I think he was watching over you." He couldn't help but feel a surge of pride in the lion he'd once raised, now a silent guardian for those in need. As they sat together in the quiet of the reserve station, Charlie knew that this was only the beginning. Somewhere, there was a story behind this boy's presence here, a story that he was determined to uncover. And as he looked into the child's trusting eyes, he realized that he might just be a part of that story. Chapter 3: The Mystery of the Boy. Inside the quiet reserve station, Charlie gently settled the young boy, who had finally begun to relax after his encounter with the lion. The boy's eyes drifted, scanning the room with a silent curiosity that revealed his innocence. Charlie offered him a small snack, and the boy accepted it timidly, taking small bites while looking up at the ranger from time to time. Although he hadn't spoken much, his gaze seemed to hold unasked questions and an unspoken story. Charlie took a deep breath and decided to try speaking with the boy again, hoping to learn more about his background. He knelt down to the boy's level, softening his tone. "Do you know your name, buddy?" he asked, keeping his voice gentle. The boy paused, looking down at his hands, seemingly uncertain. After a moment, he whispered, "Billy." Charlie smiled warmly. "Billy? That's a good name," he replied, nodding in reassurance. "Can you tell me if you have a mommy or daddy nearby?" Billy's face fell and his eyes darted to the floor. He shook his head slightly, his expression clouding with confusion and sadness. It was clear to Charlie that this little boy was struggling to understand his situation. A pang of protectiveness surged in him as he wondered what had led to such a young child being left alone in the wilderness. Deciding not to press further, Charlie straightened up and moved into the adjacent office where a small bank of security monitors lined the wall. The reserve had recently installed cameras around the perimeter to help monitor for illegal poaching activity. Charlie's hope was slim, but he knew it was worth a look. Perhaps one of the cameras had captured how Billy came to be here. He rewound the footage to early that morning, scanning the images for any sign of Billy or his family. For several minutes there was nothing but the quiet, deserted landscape. Then, suddenly, Charlie saw it. A battered old car driving slowly along the reserve's edge. The car stopped just out of sight of one of the cameras, but then a young woman stepped out, holding a small child in her arms, Billy. Charlie's eyes widened as he watched her. She appeared nervous, her head darting from side to side as if she were looking for someone. After a moment, she stepped closer to the fence line and, with a strained expression, lifted Billy over it. She placed him gently on the other side, kissed him on the forehead, and then hurried back to the car, wiping her eyes as she drove away. Charlie's chest tightened as he replayed the footage. He could see the sorrow in the woman's face, the hesitation in her movements. She had clearly left Billy here with a heavy heart, yet it made little sense why she would abandon him in such a vulnerable place. Questions swirled in his mind. Was she his mother? Was she in danger? Why leave him here, of all places? Feeling an overwhelming urge to protect Billy, Charlie returned to the room where the boy sat quietly, still munching on his snack. He knew he had to be delicate with his questions, but he needed to understand more. He knelt down again, meeting Billy's gaze. "Billy, the lady who brought you here, do you know her?" he asked gently. Billy's eyes filled with a sudden brightness and he nodded. "She's my mommy," he whispered. Then, his voice dropped, barely audible. She said she'd be back." Charlie felt a lump form in his throat. "She will," he said softly, though he wasn't entirely sure. But seeing the hope in Billy's eyes, he knew he couldn't say anything else. He placed a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder, giving it a light squeeze. The weight of responsibility pressed down on Charlie. If Billy's mother had left him here, she must have felt she had no other choice, yet she'd wanted to ensure he was safe. The question remained, why would a mother abandon her child at a wildlife reserve? There had to be more to the story, and Charlie resolved to find out. For now, he decided to make Billy as comfortable as possible. He guided him over to a small cot in the corner of the room, covering him with a blanket. The boy's eyelids were already drooping, exhaustion from the long night beginning to overtake him. Charlie watched as Billy drifted off to sleep, his small form curled up under the blanket. His heart ached as he looked at the child, feeling an unexpected but powerful bond. As Billy slept, Charlie stepped outside, taking in the vastness of the reserve. In the distance, he could see the golden-maned lion, resting near the trees, as if keeping a silent watch over the station. He wondered if the lion somehow had sensed the boy's need for protection. The animals in the reserve had surprised him countless times, but never like this. The thought of the lion brought Charlie a sense of peace, but his mind was restless with unanswered questions. He replayed the footage in his head, remembering the young woman's tearful expression. There was something more, some story that went beyond mere abandonment. Perhaps she was fleeing someone or something dangerous. Perhaps she had felt this was the safest place to leave Billy, where he might be found and cared for. Charlie returned to his desk, his mind racing with theories. He knew he needed to contact the authorities again, not just to report Billy's presence, but to ensure they understood the situation. But something in his gut told him that Billy's journey with him was far from over. For now, all he could do was wait, protect the boy, and be ready for whatever came next. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting warm hues over the reserve, Charlie sat in quiet contemplation, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over him. He knew he would do everything in his power to keep Billy safe, no matter what the truth behind his arrival turned out to be. And if that meant he had to step into the unknown, so be it. This little boy had already become a part of his world, and he wasn't about to let him down. Chapter 4: A Growing Bond. As evening settled over the wildlife reserve, Charlie moved quietly through the office, not wanting to disturb Billy, who had finally fallen into a peaceful sleep. The events of the day weighed heavily on Charlie's mind: the child's abandonment, the mother's tearful farewell on the security footage, and the strange encounter with the lion. Each piece of the puzzle only deepened his sense of responsibility for the boy. Charlie gently closed the door to the small room where Billy lay, wrapped in a blanket on a cot. The boy's small chest rose and fell steadily, and the tension that had lined his young face had melted away in sleep. Charlie couldn't help but feel a surge of protectiveness as he watched over him. This was no ordinary day at the reserve, and this boy was no ordinary visitor. The next morning, Charlie prepared a modest breakfast and set it out on the small table. He heard the sound of tiny footsteps approaching and looked up to see Billy standing in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. A smile spread across Charlie's face as he waved the boy over. "Good morning, Billy. Did you sleep well?" Billy nodded sleepily, moving toward the table. Charlie poured him a small glass of juice and gestured toward the food. "Eat up. You're going to need your energy today," he encouraged, keeping his tone light and friendly. Billy hesitated, his eyes flickering up at Charlie, searching for something unspoken. "Thank you," he whispered before quietly beginning to eat. Charlie watched him, noting the cautious way Billy held himself. Despite the fear and sadness that lingered in his eyes, the boy seemed to be adapting, slowly letting his guard down. After breakfast, Charlie decided to show Billy more of the reserve, hoping to ease his mind. He led the boy outside, pointing out various animals from a safe distance. Billy's eyes lit up at the sight of deer grazing, and a quiet smile tugged at the corners of his mouth as he watched birds swooping across the sky. Charlie found himself captivated by the boy's joy. It was as if Billy were seeing the world for the first time. As they walked further, they reached an open clearing where the golden-maned lion was resting beneath a large tree, his body stretched out in the morning sun. Billy's steps faltered, but instead of retreating, he stood still, transfixed by the lion's presence. Charlie could see the awe in his eyes, and it reminded him of his own first encounters with the animals at the reserve. "That's our friend from yesterday," Charlie said softly, kneeling beside Billy. "He helped keep you safe." Billy looked up at him, a flicker of admiration in his gaze. "He's big," he whispered, his voice tinged with both fear and fascination. Charlie nodded, watching the lion with respect. "Yes, he is, but he's also strong and protective. He's a bit like you and me, Billy. We're all just trying to take care of each other." They stood together for a moment, the morning air filled with quiet understanding. The lion opened one eye, casting a languid glance their way, acknowledging their presence without stirring. To Charlie, it was a reassuring gesture, as though the lion knew they meant no harm. Charlie gently rested his hand on Billy's shoulder, guiding him away from the clearing, allowing the lion to rest. As they continued their walk, Billy grew more talkative, occasionally asking questions about the animals and the landscape around them. Charlie answered each one patiently, feeling a sense of connection blossoming between them. It felt as though Billy was beginning to trust him, and Charlie hoped this bond would help the boy feel safe in his uncertain situation. After a while, they returned to the station. Charlie sat down at the small table with Billy, pulling out a sketchbook he often used to document observations of the animals. Flipping to a blank page, he handed Billy a pencil and encouraged him to draw something from their walk. Billy looked up at him, uncertain but eager, then carefully began sketching the lion, capturing the majesty of the creature with surprising detail for a child his age. Charlie watched as Billy focused, the tip of his tongue sticking out as he carefully shaded in the lion's mane. "You're really good at that, Billy," he praised. "The lion looks just like the real one." A shy smile crossed Billy's face, a hint of pride shining in his eyes. "I like him. He's brave," he murmured, almost to himself. Charlie nodded, feeling a pang of warmth. "You know, Billy, it takes bravery to face things that scare you. And I think you're very brave, too." Billy paused, looking up at Charlie. For a moment his guard dropped entirely, and Charlie saw the true depth of the boy's vulnerability and resilience. In that instant, Charlie realized that he was no longer just caring for a child, he was beginning to care deeply about him. The day wore on, and Charlie continued to tend to his responsibilities, occasionally glancing over at Billy, who seemed content with his sketchbook, quietly observing the world around him. As dusk began to fall, Charlie made them a simple dinner, and they sat together in comfortable silence, a rare but welcome peace settling over the reserve station. When the stars began to dot the sky, Charlie tucked Billy into the cot, pulling the blanket up around his shoulders. He could see that the day's activities had worn him out, and the boy's eyelids grew heavy. As he drifted off, he murmured, "Will the lion come back?" Charlie gently brushed a stray hair from Billy's forehead. "Maybe. He's always nearby, watching out for us," he replied softly. "And I'll be here too, okay?" Billy nodded, a soft sigh escaping his lips as he drifted into sleep. Charlie watched him for a moment longer, the quiet of the night wrapping around them like a protective cloak. He felt a strange sense of completeness, as though fate had drawn him and Billy together for a reason he couldn't yet understand. With a final glance at the sleeping boy, Charlie stepped outside, letting the cool night air wash over him. In the distance, beneath the pale glow of the moon, he could see the silhouette of the lion, resting on a ridge overlooking the station. It was a silent acknowledgement, a guardian presence that seemed to promise protection and strength. Charlie took a deep breath, feeling a calm resolve settle within him. He was no longer just a ranger in charge of protecting animals. He was now a guardian of something far more precious, a young boy who had found his way into his heart. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew he would face them with the same courage and strength he'd seen in the lion. Chapter 5. The Twist. Secrets Revealed. The next morning dawned with a misty haze over the reserve, casting a soft light across the landscape. Charlie was in the kitchen, quietly making breakfast, when he heard the soft patter of Billy's footsteps approaching. The boy was rubbing his eyes, still sleepy, but a small smile crept onto his face as he saw the food waiting for him. "Morning, Billy," Charlie greeted warmly, setting a plate down. "Sleep well?" Billy nodded, taking a seat and picking at his food. Charlie could see the boy was becoming more comfortable, growing accustomed to the routine they'd fallen into over the past few days. There was something heartening about watching Billy start to relax, though a part of Charlie's mind still lingered on the mystery of why the boy had been left here. After breakfast, Charlie decided it was time to go through Billy's belongings, hoping for any clues about his background. He gently explained to Billy what he was doing, and the boy seemed to understand, watching with quiet interest as Charlie opened the small worn backpack Billy had been carrying when he found him. Inside, Charlie found a few basic items: a change of clothes, a well-loved stuffed animal, and a small, slightly crumpled notebook. He paused as he flipped through the notebook. Most of the pages were blank, but about halfway through, his fingers grazed a small folded piece of paper. He carefully pulled it out and unfolded it, revealing a note written in hurried, almost frantic handwriting. The note was from Billy's mother. Charlie's eyes scanned the note, his heart sinking as he read her words. "To whoever finds him, please know I had no other choice. We're in danger and I cannot keep him safe. I thought I could protect him, but I can't. He deserves better, and I hope this place will give him a chance I couldn't. Please watch over him, tell him I love him, and I'll always love him." Charlie's hands tightened around the paper as he felt the weight of the mother's words settle in his heart. So this was why she'd left Billy at the reserve. It wasn't abandonment. It was a desperate last act of love and protection. She'd believed this place, with its guards, rangers, and quiet isolation, would keep him safe from whatever was chasing her. Billy, sensing something was wrong, looked up at Charlie with a questioning gaze. Is she okay?" he asked softly, his innocent eyes wide with worry. Charlie knelt down beside Billy, carefully folding the note and putting it back in the notebook. He took a deep breath, choosing his words thoughtfully. "Billy, your mom loves you very much. She wanted to make sure you'd be safe, and that's why she brought you here." Billy's lower lip quivered and he looked away, his small hands clenching. Charlie placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "And as long as you're here, I'll make sure nothing happens to you. You're safe with me, Billy. I promise." The boy nodded, his face a mix of sadness and relief. Charlie felt a pang of responsibility, knowing that he had to protect Billy, not just physically, but emotionally. This little boy was carrying a heavy burden, and Charlie knew he couldn't let him face it alone. Later that day, Charlie contacted the local authorities again, explaining the new information he'd uncovered. He asked if there had been any reports of missing persons or suspicious activities that might provide more context to Billy's mother's fears. The officer on the other end promised to investigate, but Charlie could sense the underlying skepticism in his voice. To them, this was just another missing person case, but to Charlie, it was personal. That evening, as they walked along one of the reserve's quieter paths, Billy spotted their lion friend lounging by a tree, his massive form stretched out comfortably. Billy's face lit up, and without hesitation, he hurried toward the lion, stopping a few feet away to wave. The lion opened one eye lazily, seemingly acknowledging Billy's presence before closing it again. Charlie watched the interaction with a faint smile, noticing how Billy seemed to draw strength from the lion's silent, protective presence. To Billy, the lion had become a symbol of security, a constant in a world that had recently been turned upside down. "Do you think he's watching over me?" Billy asked, looking up at Charlie with a hopeful expression. Charlie nodded, kneeling down beside him. "I do. He's a protector, just like your mom wanted for you. And he seems to like you a lot." Billy beamed, his small fingers reaching out to touch the air between them and the lion, as if bridging an invisible connection. Charlie's heart swelled with a mixture of pride and sorrow. He knew he had to protect this child, not just because of a promise, but because Billy had already become a part of him. As they walked back to the station, the setting sun painted the sky in hues of pink and gold. Charlie felt the weight of the day's discoveries and knew he had a difficult decision to make. Billy's mother was out there somewhere, and if she was in danger, he had to find a way to help her, both for her sake and for Billy's peace of mind. Inside, as Billy drifted off to sleep, Charlie sat nearby, replaying the events in his mind. The note haunted him. He could feel the mother's desperation in every word. She'd sacrificed everything for her son's safety, and he owed it to her to honor that choice. But what if the danger she'd feared was still out there, lurking, waiting? What if it followed them to the reserve? He couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was still a threat. Just then, a quiet sound outside caught his attention. Rising carefully, Charlie looked out the window and saw the faint silhouette of the golden-maned lion, watching the station from his usual spot under the moonlit sky. The lion's silent presence filled Charlie with a sense of reassurance. The two protectors, one human, one animal, seemed bound together in their unspoken promise to keep Billy safe. Charlie took a deep breath, feeling a surge of resolve. He would protect Billy from any harm, no matter what. Together, they would face whatever came their way. Chapter 6: The Decision. The morning sunlight filtered softly through the reserve's station windows, casting a gentle warmth over the small room where Billy was still sleeping soundly. Charlie sat quietly at the table, holding a mug of coffee and staring out into the distance, his mind racing with thoughts of the past few days. The note from Billy's mother had changed everything. It wasn't just a random abandonment. It was a last, desperate attempt to keep her son safe. And now, Charlie felt a sense of responsibility stronger than anything he'd known. As he sipped his coffee, his gaze drifted outside to where the lion often watched over the station. He'd become a silent guardian for both him and Billy, an unspoken protector who seemed to share Charlie's commitment to the boy. This connection was unusual, but it gave him a sense of reassurance. Somehow he knew they were in this together. Billy stirred, breaking Charlie's thoughts. Rubbing his eyes, the boy padded over to the table, climbing onto a chair beside him. "Good morning," he said sleepily, his small voice barely a whisper. Charlie smiled. "Morning, buddy. Did you sleep well?" Billy nodded, looking out the window at the vast wilderness beyond. "Will my mom come back for me?" he asked suddenly, his tone innocent, yet filled with a longing that broke Charlie's heart. Charlie hesitated, searching for the right words. "Your mom? She did something very brave to make sure you'd be safe," he said gently. "And she wanted you to be somewhere you'd be taken care of." Billy's brow furrowed in thought, processing Charlie's words. Finally, he looked up, his eyes wide with trust. "So will you take care of me, Charlie?" The question struck deep. Charlie felt a wave of emotions rise within him, both a fierce protectiveness and a hesitation, born from the weight of responsibility. But as he looked into Billy's eyes, he realized he'd already made his decision. There was no turning back now. "Yes, Billy," Charlie said, his voice steady and filled with resolve. "I'll take care of you. I'll make sure you're safe." Billy's face lit up with relief, and he leaned closer, giving Charlie a quick, spontaneous hug. The gesture took Charlie by surprise, but he returned it, his hand gently resting on the boy's back. In that moment, any doubt he'd felt vanished. The day continued quietly, with Charlie going about his duties at the reserve, all the while keeping Billy close. He showed Billy how to feed the smaller animals under their care, explaining each animal's importance to the ecosystem. Billy listened attentively, asking questions now and then. Charlie could see the boy's curiosity and intelligence shining through, even amidst the uncertainty of his situation. As the afternoon wore on, Charlie decided to call the authorities once more. He needed to update them on his decision to care for Billy, but he also needed to ensure they understood the danger that might be looming. Picking up the phone, he dialed the familiar number, waiting as the line connected. When the officer answered, Charlie quickly explained the contents of the note and his intention to look after Billy. "I believe his mother left him here for a reason," he said firmly. "And if she was in danger, there's a chance someone may come looking for him. I want to make sure he stays safe." The officer listened, though Charlie could sense a hint of skepticism in his tone. "We'll look into it," he replied. "But you should understand that you're taking on a big responsibility. If anyone does come forward, we may need to involve child services." Charlie's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice calm. "Understood. But until that happens, I'm committed to keeping Billy here, where he's safe." After hanging up, Charlie felt a surge of determination. He'd already grown attached to Billy, and he wasn't about to let him slip away. His life had changed with the arrival of this boy, and he knew he was willing to fight for his safety and happiness. Later that evening, as the sun began to set, Charlie decided to take Billy on a short walk through the reserve. The golden light of the evening cast a warm glow over the landscape, and Billy walked beside Charlie, occasionally reaching out to touch a plant or observe an animal. They shared a comfortable silence, each taking in the peacefulness of the reserve. As they rounded a bend, they spotted their lion friend once more, lying gracefully on a rock ledge overlooking the area. Billy's face lit up, and he waved at the lion. The lion lifted his head, his golden eyes meeting Charlie's with a quiet understanding. In that moment, Charlie felt a bond not only with the boy but also with the lion. a shared sense of purpose that connected all three of them. "Do you think he knows?" Billy asked, his voice full of wonder. Charlie knelt beside him, resting a hand on his shoulder. "I think he does. I think he's here to help us, to keep us safe." Billy nodded, smiling up at the lion. The peaceful moment filled Charlie with a sense of gratitude and purpose he hadn't felt before. Together, they returned to the station as night began to fall, the stars appearing in the darkening sky. Before bed, Charlie read Billy a story, his voice calm and steady, lulling the boy into a sense of security. As Billy drifted off, he mumbled softly, "Good night, Charlie." "Good night, Billy," Charlie whispered, pulling the blanket up around him. After Billy was asleep, Charlie stepped outside to take one last look around. The reserve was bathed in the quiet serenity of the night, with only the sounds of nature breaking the stillness. In the distance, he could make out the silhouette of the lion resting under the same tree as always. The lion's calm presence filled Charlie with reassurance, as though the great beast were silently vowing to help him protect the boy. In that moment, Charlie knew he'd made the right choice. Billy was a part of his life now, and he would do whatever it took to keep him safe. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, supported by the silent strength of their guardian lion. Chapter 7: A New Beginning. The days turned into a gentle routine at the reserve. Billy grew more comfortable with each passing day, and Charlie marveled at the resilience and curiosity he saw in the boy. Despite the trauma of being separated from his mother, Billy had a unique spirit, a quiet strength that emerged as he explored his new surroundings. And though he rarely spoke about his past, he seemed to find solace in the vast beauty of the reserve and the steady presence of Charlie. One warm afternoon, Charlie decided to show Billy a special area of the reserve that he hadn't visited yet, a scenic overlook that provided a panoramic view of the entire landscape. Together, they hiked up a gentle slope, Billy eagerly pointing out animals he recognized along the way. Charlie smiled, patiently answering each of his questions, glad to see the boy so animated. When they reached the top, Billy's face lit up in awe. The view was breathtaking. The reserve stretched out as far as they could see, with endless fields, clusters of trees, and the faint glimmer of a river winding through the terrain. The boy sat down on a rock, his gaze locked on the landscape as though he were absorbing every detail. "Wow," Billy whispered, wide-eyed. "It's so big." Charlie chuckled and sat down beside him. "It is. This is your new home, Billy. And as long as you're here, you're a part of it, just like the animals, the trees, and even that river." Billy looked up at him, his eyes shining with something that almost looked like pride. "Really?" "Really," Charlie replied with a warm smile. "This place is special, and you're part of what makes it even more special." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, simply watching the world around them. Charlie felt a deep sense of peace that he hadn't known for a long time. Billy, too, seemed content, his small shoulders finally relaxing as though he could feel the safety and belonging that Charlie had promised him. Their quiet moment was interrupted by the sound of soft footsteps. Turning, they saw their lion friend approaching, his golden mane catching the sunlight. He moved with a calm, almost regal grace, his gaze shifting between Charlie and Billy. Without hesitation, he came to rest beside them, lying down on the warm ground and settling in as though he were part of their conversation. Billy grinned and moved a little closer to the lion, though still respecting his space. "He likes being here too," he said, looking up at Charlie. Charlie nodded. "He does. He's watched over this land for a long time, just like he's been watching over you." They stayed together for a while longer, Charlie sharing stories about the lion's history, about the challenges he'd faced as he grew into the powerful creature he was today. Billy listened intently, his admiration for the lion growing with each story, and Charlie, watching the boy and the lion together, felt that they truly were becoming a family, bound by the trials and secrets they shared. As they made their way back down to the reserve station, Billy held Charlie's hand, a quiet contentment on his face. That evening, Charlie decided it was time to discuss something important with Billy: his future. After dinner, they sat together on the porch, the stars beginning to twinkle above them. "Billy," Charlie began, his voice gentle, "I want to talk to you about something. I know you miss your mom, and I know things have been hard, but I want you to know that if you'd like, I'd be happy to be here for you, for as long as you need." Billy looked up at him, his face filled with a mixture of surprise and hope. "You mean, I can stay?" Charlie nodded, a warm smile spreading across his face. "Yes, Billy. This can be your home for as long as you want. You'll always be welcome here, and I'll do everything I can to keep you safe." Billy's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of joy. He moved closer to Charlie, wrapping his small arms around him in a heartfelt hug. Charlie returned the hug, feeling the weight of the promise he'd made. This boy was more than just a responsibility now, he was family. As the stars shone brighter in the night sky, Charlie and Billy sat together, watching the reserve quietly settle down for the night. The lion, their silent protector, lay nearby, his golden eyes watching over them both. In that moment, Charlie felt complete, a sense of purpose that he hadn't felt before. The days that followed were filled with moments of laughter, learning, and quiet bonding. Charlie taught Billy about the animals, the plants, and the rhythms of life at the reserve. And in return, Billy brought a new kind of joy to Charlie's life, a warmth and lightness that reminded him of what it meant to truly care for someone. One afternoon, as they walked along a path together, Billy suddenly stopped, his face thoughtful. "Charlie, do you think my mom would be proud of me for staying here?" Charlie knelt down beside him, meeting his gaze with gentle eyes. "Billy, I think your mom would be so proud of you. You've been through so much, and yet you've shown strength, kindness, and bravery. She'd be grateful to know that you're safe and happy here." Billy nodded, his small hand reaching for Charlie's. "I think she'd like you too." Charlie felt a warmth spread through him, and he gave Billy's hand a reassuring squeeze. "Thank you, Billy. I'm honored that you think that. And I know she'd be proud of both of us for finding each other." They continued their walk, their footsteps in harmony with the gentle sounds of the reserve. And as they strolled along, the lion appeared in the distance, watching them with his calm, steady gaze. It was as if he, too, approved of this new beginning. As night fell, they returned to the station, where Billy settled into bed with a smile on his face. Charlie watched over him for a moment before stepping outside. The lion lay beneath his usual tree, his golden mane a quiet symbol of strength and vigilance. Charlie gazed at him with gratitude, feeling that they were not only protectors of the land, but protectors of each other. This was more than a sanctuary now, it was a home, a place of healing and new beginnings. And Charlie knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he, Billy, and their silent guardian would face them together. Chapter 8. A Heartwarming Farewell. The morning sun rose over the reserve, casting a golden glow on the world that had become Billy's sanctuary. It had been several months since he'd first arrived, and life had settled into a quiet rhythm filled with small moments of happiness, laughter, and learning. Charlie had grown deeply attached to Billy, and the boy had flourished under his care. Together, they had found a sense of belonging, and for the first time in his life, Charlie felt complete. As Billy and Charlie sat together over breakfast, there was a sense of peace between them, each fully content in the other's presence. Billy was sketching in his notebook, carefully drawing a picture of their lion friend, whose majestic figure had become a symbol of protection and strength. Charlie watched him with a proud smile, his heart swelling with gratitude for the life they had built together. But as the morning went on, the peace was interrupted by a call from the local authorities. Charlie answered, his voice steady, though a subtle tension filled the air. On the other end, an officer informed him that they had finally located Billy's family, an aunt who lived a few towns away and had been searching for Billy ever since she learned of her sister's disappearance. Charlie felt a mixture of emotions, relief that Billy had family who wanted him and sorrow at the thought of saying goodbye. He had known this day might come, but he hadn't realized how much he'd come to love the boy, or how hard it would be to let him go. As he hung up the phone, Charlie took a deep breath and went to find Billy, who was sitting outside on the porch, his sketchbook on his lap. The lion lay a short distance away, as he often did, his golden mane catching the sunlight. Charlie approached Billy slowly, kneeling down beside him. "Billy," he began gently, his voice soft. "I just got a call. They found your aunt. She's been looking for you, and she's going to come here soon." Billy looked up, his eyes wide with a mixture of confusion and sadness. "My aunt?" he whispered. "Does that mean I have to leave?" Charlie nodded, his own heart heavy. "Yes, buddy. She's family, and she wants to take care of you. She'll give you a good home, just like I tried to. But I know this is hard, and I'm going to be here with you until you're ready." Billy's face crumpled and he looked down at his hands, his fingers nervously twisting together. "But I like it here. I like being with you and him." He gestured toward the lion, who lifted his head, his golden eyes watching them with calm understanding. Charlie wrapped an arm around Billy's shoulders, pulling him close. "I know, Billy. I love having you here too. But this isn't goodbye forever. You can come visit any time, and I'll always be here. We're family, even if we're not together all the time." Billy leaned into Charlie, his small shoulders shaking as he let himself cry. Charlie held him, his own eyes misty, but he kept his voice calm and steady, comforting the boy. When the tears subsided, Billy looked up, his gaze drifting to the lion. "Can we go see him? One last time?" he asked softly. Charlie nodded, and together they walked over to where the lion lay. Billy crouched down beside him, reaching out a tentative hand to place on the lion's thick mane. The lion, sensing the boy's sadness, let out a soft rumbling purr, a comforting sound that seemed to ease Billy's heartache. The three of them sat together in quiet companionship, sharing a moment that transcended words. The lion seemed to understand, his calm presence a silent promise that he would always be watching over them. By mid-afternoon, Billy's aunt arrived. She was a kind-looking woman with gentle eyes, and she greeted Billy with open arms, assuring him that he would be loved and cared for. Billy looked at her with uncertainty, but eventually moved closer, feeling a connection that reassured him. As they prepared to leave, Billy turned back to Charlie, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and gratitude. He ran to him, wrapping his arms around his waist in a tight hug. "Thank you, Charlie, for everything." Charlie hugged him back, his voice thick with emotion. "You're welcome, Billy. Remember, you'll always have a home here. You're always welcome." Billy nodded, and with one last look at the lion, who was watching them intently, he walked toward the car with his aunt. As they drove away, Charlie stood there, watching until the car disappeared down the road, a sense of bittersweet pride filling his heart. He knew Billy was on a new journey, one that would bring him safety and love, but he would miss him deeply. As evening fell, Charlie walked through the reserve, reflecting on the months he'd shared with Billy. The quiet companionship, the laughter, the shared bond with the lion, all of it had changed him in ways he hadn't anticipated. He felt a renewed sense of purpose and peace, knowing he had made a difference in the boy's life. In the distance, he spotted the lion resting on a hill, his golden mane illuminated by the soft glow of the setting sun. Charlie approached him, feeling a quiet gratitude for his steadfast companionship. The lion met his gaze, and for a moment they shared a look of mutual understanding, a silent acknowledgement of the journey they had shared with Billy. As the stars began to appear in the night sky, Charlie sat down beside the lion, feeling a sense of completion. He knew that this wasn't the end of his story, but rather the beginning of a new chapter. The reserve would continue to be a place of healing and sanctuary, a home for those who needed it. And one day, he hoped, Billy would return to visit, to see the place where he had found a new beginning. Together, Charlie and the lion sat in quiet companionship, guardians of the land and of each other, watching as the night settled over the reserve. They would be ready for whatever the future brought, their bond unbroken, their purpose clear.